Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, coming at you live from the Cincy Light Studios, presented as always by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. They can be found on Instagram at RemyTavCincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And you can always get your Cincy Light there at Remington Tavern. We are coming at you from the Cincy Light Studios. If you missed your chance to pick up one of the sweet limited edition Cincy Light basketball tees at the Crosstown Shootout this past weekend, don't fret. Rheingeist is doing a second print run, and you can pre-order one until Friday, December 20th. I don't know why Chad hasn't gotten us one of those anyway, George.
Yeah, I know. I don't have one yet.
If you have any Cincy Light fans on your Christmas list this year, head over to the Rheingeist shop. Loads of Cincy Light gear to level up your bar cave. You can order online and pick up in the tap room in OTR if you're picking up last-minute gifts. And with that, George, we are underway. It's been since 2018, but your Cincinnati Bearcats did win the 92nd Crosstown Shootout presented by Skyline, of course. And it was a nail-biter.
It was crazy. They always are. And
they always are.
I just, you can't predict. And, Xavier goes on a run, and basketball's a game on runs, and UC goes up at 9 in the second half. Xavier storms back and takes a lead, and with 7 minutes to go, I think UC was down 7, somewhere in that neighborhood, and it looked pretty dire, but they gutted it out. I just feel like, and this will sound like a crack against Xavier, but I felt like UC probably played its worst game of the season and still found a way to win, which says a lot about the guts those kids had. But Xavier played hard too, and they had a lot of weird stuff happen to them. And, there's calls you can talk about, and things that didn't go Xavier's way, and it had a wide open look at a 3 at the end. I know how that happened, but I don't know how you let that happen. But Fremantle, who has every excuse in the world now, as you look back and understand he had that knee injury late in the game.
Sure enough.
Every excuse in the world to not make that shot. I mean, he was wide open, but very interesting game, very strange game. I mean, the crowd, first of all, was unreal. And I got there probably 10, 15 minutes before tip-off to my seat. And they did this early happy hour thing. So they opened the doors at noon, 2 hours before game time. And I have to say that had to be a rousing success, because I have never seen that many people in their seats 10 minutes before tip-off as what I saw at that game. And I'm just like, it immediately just reminded me why this is my favorite event of the year when it comes to sports in Cincinnati. And opening day's bigger for the Reds because you got the parade. It's huge. But the game itself can never, it's game 1 of 162. This is it between UC and Xavier, and the electricity from before tip-off to even after the game is like nothing else in sports in Cincinnati. It's crazy. And, it happens at both arenas. It happens at Cintas. It happens at Fifth Third. And, you'll see if the Bearcats can run off a few now, because they have not. When's the last time they won at Cintas? I think Tony Bobbitt was on the UC team, and they should have won the Lance Stevenson year that went to overtime or double overtime, and he missed free throws that would have sealed it. They should have won that one at Cintas, but it's been a long time since they've won there. But what a game. Everybody got their money's worth. I know Xavier fans were disappointed, but hey, they had reeled off 5 in a row. It was finally time for UC to get one, and the Bearcats were able to do it. No matter how ugly it was entertaining because everybody played hard. And I just, and like I said, a weird game. Fremantle was 16 in the first half, hits that 3 at the buzzer, and then 2 more points the rest of the game.
Well,
And
I don't think
Cotwell was the opposite.
you probably shouldn't have started barking at Kenyon Martin.
That can be some bad mojo when you do stuff like that. It really can. But I mean, that makes the shootout the shootout. Let's face it, wasn't all that long ago. It ended with a bunch of guys swinging. So it's been. I talk to guys from prior generations from me who remember bottles and stuff hitting the court at games when Oscar was playing and things like that. And it's just always been it's a rough game. And look, when you got two schools like this that have proud programs and meet once a year in this thing, it's going to be that way. And it was funny. And I got to say, that preview thing that UC put out, the Kenyon Martin voice, said it great, because 364 days a year, Cincinnati roots for the Reds, Bengals. We love Cincinnati. Everybody, loves a lot of the same things. But one day out of the year, there's a big split in this town. And Saturday was it. And it was just breathtaking. I was glad to get back to a shootout, because I did miss last year's. And then I may not have even made it the year before. I can't remember what happened, but probably another surgery. But it just reminded me of why I always said that was by far and away the best sporting event in Cincinnati year after year after year. And it is. Love opening day. That's the biggest. You got your parade. You got all that pomp and circumstance and the flyover and the sellout crowd at GABP. But there's no electricity like there is in the arena at the shootout. And, UC had a lot of reasons or a lot of ways they could have lost that game. How do you explain Jizzle's game?
What a weird game for him to go 0 for 11, and he wasn't taking bad shots. It wasn't like it wasn't like he was one of the guys shooting NBA range threes and just clanging them.
The one that got me was when he followed a shot, he missed. This would have been in the first half because they were down at my end, and took a pretty decent medium range jumper, misses, comes straight back to him. He rebounds it. He's got a 5-6 footer wide open and does it again and miss. He doesn't miss that shot. And it just wasn't going in for whatever reason for him. And then for him to be the guy at the free throw line at the end of the game. And I must say I was very, very surprised that he would have been the guy at the line then and not Thomas, the way Thomas was playing. But it worked out. And Wes trusts him. And, we all know he's got a lot of steel in him. Jizzle does. And he's a stud. And he stood up there and he made them. And, and then coming down, why UC didn't foul before that 3-point shot.
They were supposed to.
I mean, it worked out for him. But my God, if you're a coach, and I know Wes had to be pulling his hair out when that was going, like, what are we doing? But then at the other end, Sean was kind of saying, what are we doing too? And it's just like, hey, players in the moment sometimes forget to do what they're supposed to.
Good old sweaty Sean.
Yeah, it was a hell of a game. And I think Sean coached a hell of a game. You come out and see Aziz on Fremantle a lot early, which that's how I would have started out playing it.
Sure.
But my God, Dylan Mitchell, holy smokes. That kid, what he did in that game that doesn't show up in the box score is it's gold. He's
so much fun. He's so much fun to watch. And I think
Aziz, give Aziz credit too. Aziz hustled his butt off and made that one save down at the end where he, I mean, this dude's a praying mantis, and somehow he gets that ball on the baseline and saves it. And but the guys were playing, both teams, just, every year they play so hard, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you brought up Aziz. He played the most minutes of his career at Cincinnati with 33. He also, I think, played his best game that he's ever had as a
I think
Bearcat
so too.
because he just did everything, hustle plays, the lobs when they were playable lobs, when Xavier wasn't onto the lobs and starting to tip them. But he did it all both ways. It was really fun to watch him play. Dylan Mitchell double in his first crosstown shootout. Just magnificent play out of him. The lobs going his way were he's a human highlight reel at this point.
He's a lot of fun to watch, and plays defense and just busts his rear, and and that made a difference. Him on that defensive end made a hell of a difference. Probably from, I don't know, somewhere around midway through the first half on. I just thought, and Thomas, his defense. I mean, this dude.
Yeah.
Thank God he showed up and did what he did in that game, or they would have been in real trouble.
Dan looks like he's almost where we want him to be, as he's already back to making the first turnover on the first possession of every game. So we're getting real close to normal Dan Skillings being back. But he had a weird game and just still knocking some rust off. I think this is his third game of the season.
I think second, right? Oh no, third. Counting the first one, yeah. Third of the season. Second since he's got back.
Plenty of rust, and Coach talked about it. I want to say it was today, saying that while his play is where you want it to be, his conditioning probably isn't quite where you want it to be. So that's still a work in progress.
He still comes up with some rebounds he's not supposed to. Now the one, okay, he cheated a little, but there was another one down there at that end. And the fella next to me, who might be related to me, was complaining about him doing something. I'm like, if he wasn't in the game right now, they wouldn't have gotten that rebound, because he's got those Inspector Gadget arms. And somehow he got to this ball and corralled it and pulled it in one-handed. And it's like, I'll take that all day long. He's going to be fine. He's just got to get back in the flow. And as Coach said, get that conditioning and get used to playing again. But he played hard, and that's what you got. That's what you got to get out of him.
Yeah, his defense against Conwell was spectacular. Giving up 16 points, I think it was.
It was spectacular, except for one play. However, 17. And I never saw the good replay on that. Did he actually foul him, or was that just a makeup for that miss down at the other end? I've heard. I should have gone back today and looked at that before we jumped on here, because I haven't.
I was in the midst of family Christmas in Indy while watching that game, albeit on a very large 150-inch movie theater screen. So that was nice. But I don't know. I mean, I did see somebody on Twitter today, and I wish I could give them credit for it, but there were some stills from earlier in the game where Xavier had players that were also on, like, going into the rebounding area on free throws early on some different free throws as well. So it just is what it is. Sometimes you're going to get those calls. Sometimes you're not.
Right. And there was a call on Thomas where he took the charge. I think it was Day, and
yeah, it was
circle.
Right.
And that was a charge.
Right.
And so, you can go back through that and cut it 100 different ways when you go back. And I will agree with Sean on this. And I don't know, but you don't want to get to the point where you're having to review every freaking free throw if a guy got the lane early, if he got the rebound, because you just chop the game up when you do that. But man, in that situation down the stretch, maybe that should be reviewable. It's a shame, but then again, it's not, because calls go both ways. And it's just like that Thomas call. And that's something, if I remember correctly, when they first put that circle there, they used to review that all the time. And if they would have reviewed that, that would have gone the other way. That would have been a charge.
But it is what it is. I know, had the shoe been on the other foot, where it feels like Cincinnati is the team that generally gets hit with those calls, or a situation
like the Gardens that time in the final seconds, went off the Xavier player and they ruled it X ball and they hit the game winner off the inbounds. Yeah, stuff like that happens.
Weird things happen, especially in this game. And so you
Something
take what
was weird to me is UC getting to the free throw line 26 times.
Making 19.
Xavier. I mean, and Xavier made 15 out of the 17, but that was my big concern was they were going to have a huge advantage in free throws, and then UC outscored them by 4 at the line, hit 19 to 27. So that was a big surprise to me.
19 to 26, but yes.
Or 19 and 26, right.
But yeah, it was just when your top 3 scorers have the type of games that they do, or I guess what you would consider your top 3 shooters anyway, in CMOS, Dan, and Jizzle, and you still end up with the win. CMOS, of course, comes on late in the second half.
Yes, he did.
He came on in the second half. It was just a wild. Connor Hickman had a true Bearcat game.
Oh my God! Yes, he was huge. He was
gritty. He was gritty, doing things that you want to see.
He missed a couple layups. It's not like him, but my God, he was big. Had a couple big threes. Had that other play where he got fouled and scored a 3-point play, and just played his butt off on defense. Can't complain about any of that. It was just a weird game where a lot of shots that usually don't. And Xavier usually has a guy get hot from 3-point land too. I mean, slowly boom. The dude did it last year that was the leading scorer. It seems like every year they have a guy that goes off at the 3-point line. I think D. Davis did it one year. Trayvon Blewett did it. Christ, they had a big man down at US Bank Arena do it one time, or whatever it's called now, Heritage Bank. It seems like every year. That didn't happen this year. They were, what were they, 6 of 19 from 3, and UC was 5 of 20. So that a lot of these games in these shootouts that UC has lost, there's been somebody that's gone off from that 3-point line, and sometimes that now the guys the past couple of years were good shooters. You got to
Quincy Oliveira is the one who did it last year for them. But yeah, it's glad it's over, and you got to look right to this next weekend against another big opponent as you're going back to Heritage Bank Arena for that the neutral game site. I guess they're calling it a semi-neutral game.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yes. But in any case, you'll all the RC Cola you can drink.
That's right.
And Cincinnati will be taking on Dayton, who, we had it here in the chat. Graybush Live said Dayton survives UNLV with an and 1 with 8 seconds left. I know you were watching that game. Dayton's concerning. I'm not at all comfortable about this game.
No, Dayton's pretty good. Now, they're not really deep, but they play at a pace that they don't have to do a whole lot of substitutions. But tonight, and I'll look at that box. Yeah, they win by 1, 66-65. So that was probably Malachi Smith that hit that jumper and then went to the line, I guess, to give them the final margin. But the freshman, the 7-footer from, I think he's from France, Latang, had a good game for them tonight. He ended up with 10 points, but when they were struggling early, and he hasn't done a whole lot for them, but he did tonight. But they had a good balance scoring. Smith finished with 11 points. Key 13, Santos 14. Cheeks didn't have his usual crazy game, but he did. He always does something. He's one of those across the board guys. He was 0 of 4 from the field, but he had 10 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, they've got some good players. They're not overly big. What's Zeb Key? He's 6'8". They got that 7-footer. They got a Santos is pretty big. But it's going to be interesting. It's a game UC can win, but Dayton is damn good. And I did some math earlier, looking at these two teams and running some numbers and stuff. It's going to come out a tie game according to my math. I looked at it every which way I could, and it comes out a tie game. Let me see if I had some percentage points here. Yeah, UC might win by a half a point, according to my numbers. But it's going to be, it's that close. And if you look at the rankings and you look at the Ken Palm and all that stuff, they're just right there together in these rankings. So it's expected to be a close one.
Who needs Ken Palm when you've got George Vogue?
Well, I rely on all those sites to kind of, and I still can't figure it out. So if it ends in a tie, I call it.
Well, that's the George Vogue ranking right there. We got to shorten it up.
Fans turn out. I know
yeah,
there's
for
a
sure.
lot of grumbling, and it is a pricey ticket, and you can't get. But as far as I know, I'll be there. But I don't think I have a ticket yet. But I looked in one of the sections. I'm like, that's where I want to sit, and the price on that ticket. I think I was on a secondary site though, because I don't think that ticket would have started off at $309. But I'll get in there. I'm going to pay for a ticket somehow, some way, and probably be sitting in the rafters, but that's okay. When UC used to play their games back there in the 70s and 80s, a lot of times I was in the rafters. Although when I was a student, they had the student section right behind the opposing bench. And that's just a bad idea.
Terrible idea.
Bad idea. Oh, when Louisville would come in, oh my God, it was brutal.
Terrible.
Yeah, I got more than dirty looks from a few Louisville players when I was a student.
Graybush said he was there as a kid for the UC UK stall ball game.
Oh God, yes, I was there for that. That was so bad. But I don't know what else UC could do. They were going to get murdered. And it's like, you look at it from, Tony Yates takes the air out of the ball because that's the only way he can stay in it. But Kentucky won't get out of their damn zone and come out and guard and get after it. And it set basketball back, and probably probably still sticks in Kentucky's crawl, and that's probably a reason why they don't want to come up here and ever play.
Before we move off basketball, I know our colleague Scott Springer put a video out on this. I did have a tweet out when I heard it live on the broadcast. You weren't listening to the broadcast as you were at the game, but the announcers referring to Oscar Robertson, one of the greatest players of all time, as Oscar Robinson again and again and again. It's an embarrassment. What are you doing? You are a professional. How do you mess that name up? It's in the rafters if you needed help.
Yeah, it is. It's right there on. And I mean, it's like saying Babe Ruth, is Babe Russ. I don't get it. How you can be, if you're that involved in the game of basketball that you're calling games, and you probably walk past the damn statue coming into the media entrance.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. That's not good. That needs to be cleaned up. And I know some people have done it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. We've had like some news reporters who aren't from Cincinnati. Now, they're in their 20s and they weren't around and they're not basketball fans and all. But still, come on. One of the greatest of all time.
I can understand maybe just a slip once, and then you go back and say his name again later on and make sure you correct it. But it was at least 3 times that I caught in the first half. And after that, I was kind of involved with kids and some different things, and
that's
pulled away from hearing it as much. But at least 3 times in the first half.
That's terrible. I mean, I don't know what to say about that except, my God, that's
the only thing.
I mean, you should be fined for that. For every time you say it, his pay should have been docked.
It very well could have been more than that, but ESPN Plus had issues actually getting the video feed out to everyone because ESPN Plus is going to ESPN Plus.
Off the streets to come in and call the game. Then it sounds like they were panicking.
I don't know. It was a whole mess of a production, and you hate that kind of reflects on Cincinnati, but that's out of their hands. That's on the production company. So you hope that maybe next year you actually put this game on a channel instead of here.
Yeah, that's silly. And
the dungeon of the ESPN Plus.
The ESPN Plus games, and I get it, and they want to get as many, But that game should be offered to a local station to air. And now these local stations say, like, we have, channel 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. If you happen to have some network thing that you can't preempt, you can put it on the other one and people can see the darn thing. In Cincinnati, who don't have the means, I mean, let's face it. A lot of people my age don't know how the hell to stream on their television and get ESPN Plus, right?
Your words, not mine.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you, because you don't know how many friends I've been over, like, okay, here, do this. And now you hit and then I'll still get calls right before game time. Where do I go to again? What's that password? It's like, come on, man. I got to spoon feed him. So, that thing should have been offered to one of the local outlets or somebody where that thing, I don't care if it was on like, Spectrum One and, something that Alta Fiber has or whatever, but just some way that everyone would have had access to that, because that is a shame. And that's something that should not happen again. And I don't know how. I know they keep wanting people to buy ESPN Plus, and I get that, but that's BS when a game of that magnitude in our city cannot be seen by everyone.
I imagine the other 2:00 games that you were going up against on the different ESPN channels or whatever the case may be, probably, I don't know what the slate was, but I can't imagine it was much bigger than this.
No, I think this was a play by them to get people to pony up and pay for the ESPN Plus. I think because on its own merit, that game should have been on ESPNU or 2 or main ESPN. Hell, they put it on ESPN News.
Particularly,
I think they saw this as a nugget, and it's like, we can get a lot more people to pay that $9.99 or what is it now, $11.99 to subscribe for a month or whatever to watch this game, which that is a game, of that magnitude. Like, if you go and buy a ticket, it's going to be a lot more, but still, I just think that's a shame. And I don't know how much say UC's administration would have in that, but I would be putting heat on those people to put that somewhere where it's not on that pay-per-view.
Yeah, I would imagine. I think Chad brought it up the other day, but the Big East is not traditionally on ESPN Plus, so
right.
That's probably who your target audience was, and trying to get them to pony up for ESPN Plus.
Yeah, because they're what are they? CBS Sports and FS, and they're Fox mainly, but some of those games still end up on CBS Sportsnet too. And I was hoping Dayton would tonight, but it was on Peacock.
Well, in any case, at the basketball game, there was an announcement from tight end Joe Royer, who came out onto the court with big Dante Corleone and Brendan Sorsby. And Joe Royer announced that he is coming back to the Bearcats for one final year. How did you tingle a little bit, George? How did you feel?
Totally. I looked at the guy next to me. I go, did they just say Royer's coming back? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, holy smokes. And the place went nuts, and they were going, everyone was on their feet clapping anyway. And then they make that announcement, and it was a roar. It was a moment. And it was like, holy crap. And when he came out, you're thinking, okay, he's here for this, and he's out there on the court with those guys. He's got to be coming back, right? And then they made that announcement, and it was fantastic. And that was a great way to do it. It was beautiful. And another thing that got me was big Dante Corleone. Now, have you seen some of these big football players throw out the first pitch at ball games and stuff? Well, he comes out with these basketballs to throw, the little ones, like these. He's got an arm. I don't know if he played baseball or not, but no, usually these big football players, a lot of times, and linemen, they can't throw a baseball from here to there when they're out there on the mound for these opening pitches. He was firing those things. I was impressed. That's probably why I missed the Royer announcement, because I'm yelling about how great Dante's arm was. I got shocked the hell out of me. I don't know. He may have played some baseball as a kid because he sure had a good looking arm, but that was a good moment. It was good to see those guys there. And they stood in front of the student section for most of the game there and cheered on the Cats. And yeah, that was a great moment. And certainly I was glad I was there. It's they had a lot of cool stuff in the breaks going on. That was probably the coolest, but also, introducing Kenyon Martin from his center court seat. Sure. And the ovation he got was just, it was ridiculous. In fact, they did that. And then right after that, they do the, how they usually recognize a member of the service, a retired armed service member who's got ties to UC. And they did that. And it's like, you almost felt bad. It's like, oh my God, they should have done the service guy first.
Yeah.
It was almost like, because that roar for Kenyon was unbelievable. It's like, you can't follow the act of Kenyon Martin at a UC basketball game. It's just
not fair.
And the dude got applause. I believe he was an ex-Marine, and he got applause, and it was good applause. But I just felt like maybe they should have done him first and then done the Kenyon thing, because that is a tough act to follow at Fifth Third Arena.
You're not lying. Getting back to Joe Royer, though, we talked about it last night on the BBP about how this is a nod at things being okay with the coaching staff and that they haven't lost the locker room. And I brought up the fact that it's not only a nod to the coaching staff and that the fact that these players do seem to largely have their faith still in the coaching staff, but also Joe Royer still has faith in Brendan Sorsby.
Yeah, and that is true. He needs him, and Sorsby needs Royer, and Royer needs Sorsby. And
yes,
it's apparent that they feel like that they can make some good things happen next year. And I don't know how the NIL money and all this worked out, but I know this. With the year Joe had, 50 catches? That's damn good for a college tight end. Correct me if I'm wrong, school record, right, for a tight end in a season?
Most catches in a season. He passed Travis Kelce.
There's a lot of people. I mean, he would have been something people would have pursued, in the Big Ten and the SEC, whatever level you want to talk about. And I don't know what other opportunities he had. I'm sure he did.
NFL.
Yeah, and I just very pleased he's back. And as I sit here and we're talking about this right now, damn it, I saw his old high school coach last night, and I could have gotten a little more intel on this whole thing and how it unfolded probably, and I didn't. I sat there and gave this guy grief because he hasn't retired yet.
Chad said it was between coming back to Cincinnati and going to the NFL, and that was all the way up to they didn't know if he was going to walk out onto the floor with those other guys. I guess at the beginning of the game, even.
Is that right?
He still had it was like a down to the last minute type decision that he made there. So
I'll tell you what, I'm glad he did it. I've seen some of what the projections were for the NFL, and then you figure what he'll make in NIL, and then what he will improve his stock as going into the league next year. It probably works out financially for him, or at worst a wash, but I would think it'll work out for him because just the more he plays, because he didn't play a lot until this year. Like, he was hurt and had everything else going on with his mom and just all that stuff that happened that was very unfortunate. And he couldn't get his career unlocked. And he was able to do that this year. And now the sky's the limit for that man. He's got serious talent, talent. And I think he's going to be a hot commodity this time next year when those NFL personnel guys start judging their draft boards.
Speaking of hot commodities, there are some new Bearcat names that have been brought into the fold, some as recently as even this evening. But you have kicker Steven Rusnak from Charlotte, which was a huge relief for me. I was terrified because we did not have a kicker. I didn't know when we were going to get a kicker. I was just very nervous about the whole kicking situation, especially coming off of last season where we had to switch kickers. You had two kickers last year, and then you had no kicker going into this offseason. So, yes, that makes me feel much better. Also, Caleb Goody from Colorado State. He is now a Bearcat. Matthew, maybe the coolest name of any recent Bearcat that I can think of. God-given name as opposed to a nickname. But Matthew McDoom from Coastal Carolina. That's such a fun name. He plays corner. Then you have Jalen White from Old Dominion, who plays defensive end. Cyrus Allen coming up from Texas A&M, another wide receiver. Jeff Caldwell from Lindenwood, another wide receiver. And interior offensive lineman Taron Tio from Ball State. And then there was one guy.
There was another offensive lineman, the tackle.
I'm going to mess up his name so badly.
Well, I'm not even going to try it. I want you to try.
That's why you're in the seat you're in, and I'm in this seat. But Nolan Latulipe, maybe. I'm not really sure.
Said it a lot better when we were talking before the show.
Yeah, that's because the pressure wasn't on in the middle of the conversation. But he comes in from Albany. So lots of new names. The Athletic said that we had at least yesterday morning, they were heralding us as one of the top transfer classes already, filling in the holes that we had on this team. How are you feeling right now as you look at the guys that they've brought in?
I feel good about what they've done, and I'm so glad. Well, they had to attack that wide receiver position. They absolutely had to, and they did. I mean, one or two of these guys are pretty good burners too, if I remember reading about it correctly. And it's they're not household names, but they are names obviously that this coaching staff identified by doing all their scouting and looking that they really, really wanted. And the one was from where, A&M. Is he the one that committed to Tulane and that flipped yesterday?
Yes,
I'm thinking he was. Yeah. So obviously they didn't give up on him. I just hope they get pen to paper on all these guys. But I like what they've done so far, and I like getting that kicker. And I was looking at his stats tonight and had 2 or 3 over 50 yards. He was 11 of 11 on field goals, made every extra point. And kickers are so weird. There's still no guarantee he's going to come in here and do that. I mean, you look at Justin Tucker and what he's going through. McPherson's out with the injury, but before that and what he was going through, and kickers go through those things. So, but it sounds like they went out and got a good one, and please let him remain consistent once he gets to Cincinnati, because that cost him ball games this year. But I'm pleased. It's not, and I did not expect, and people expect, they're going to get all these, name players from somewhere. I never expected that. In fact, I think UC had enough holes to fill that they got to spend their money wisely. Sure. And I feel like they're doing that. I felt like they did that, by saving money on the recruiting class, by getting these mostly, not all, but mostly developmental guys that, in 2 to 3 years could be a lot of help. Now, there's some kids out of that class that may be able to play right away, but I'm pleased with what they've done, and we'll see what they do next week. What do we got till the 28th, and the portal closes for the guys in the playoffs?
That just means that people can't enter the portal any longer. You can still bring guys in after that. It's just getting them enrolled tends to get a little tricky.
I'm just interested to see what, who else they jump on and what they go after. But my God, I'm so glad. What is it? 3 wide receivers?
Yes.
2 offensive linemen, I think.
Yes.
I'm glad they beefed up those positions, because they really, really needed that.
I'd imagine you're probably going to try and bring in at least 1 or 2 more defensive backs, whether it be corner, safety.
They're off to a good start in that department too, and I hope they get that linebacker from Oregon State too.
Yeah, the kid they got in McDoom, he's all Sun Belt. So he had a great year last season.
Oh, yeah, terrific. He looks like the real deal. He looks like a legit cover guy.
It'd be fun to start seeing interceptions again.
What's that?
It'd be fun to start seeing interceptions again.
I know. It totally would. But, he's – I have not seen him play. But what I've read about him, he could be their best corner that they've had in a while since a couple guys went in the NFL draft.
I think that he's going to be an instant fan favorite with people just yelling out Nick Doom.
That name is just perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I feel like the NIL, just what you can do with that name should be endless. But
I would think.
I imagine they'd probably also try and bring in a linebacker at some point in time, especially looking at some of the names that they've offered that are out there. It looks like there's a lot of linebackers that they've offered. So we'll see if they end up bringing in one or two there. And of course, you want to see them bring in another running back, as that room, I guess, is a little light at this point in time. You want to have somebody to probably.
Yeah. And I wonder, I wonder how much they'll have to bank on that freshman that they signed, in the recruiting class. If I don't know, he seems like a guy that might be able to get some playing time early.
Well, we'll see. They were certainly not shy about playing freshmen last season, so I would imagine that if you can make plays, especially if you get to campus early, in that wave of freshmen coming in January, as opposed to waiting until this summer to get here. I think that certainly made a big difference for the freshmen.
Room, though? You got Covey, you got Pryor coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Chance Williams is still there. I think that might be it.
Yeah, there may be a walk-on or two, but are there going to be walk-ons anymore when this thing goes to 105? I don't know if there are.
Who knows?
I know that's a crazy question that just popped in my head, but it's hard to keep up with this stuff. I was at an event last night and someone's like, my God. And we were talking about the transfer portal and all that and how crazy it is. And they're like, you got to be glad you got out when you did, because you'll keep up with this. Like every 5 minutes, you're getting buzzed with something that's changed. And boy, I know we talked about last week, how much was going on last Monday, just in the world in general and in sports. And it seems like this week, it's the same way, man. I mean, there's so much going on, and a lot of it has to do with college football.
Randy in the chat says Tio was named All-MAC third team. So, yeah, you definitely got some guys with some accolades coming in here. So it should be exciting to see what else they add.
Right? He's from farm country up there, I think, like they're Dark County in that area.
Wherever that is.
I used to go up there every now and then. I went to the Minster. What's their big thing? Their Oktoberfest they have up there. Second to none.
Sure.
Unless you go to Germany.
I don't know. Cincinnati puts on a pretty good Oktoberfest, but
yeah, it does. I would agree.
In any case, we got to talk about that other football team here in the city. They won a game.
My God, I guess you call that a game.
Still keeping their playoff chances alive, but what a disgusting game that was on Sunday for your Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know what they're – I mean, it was bad enough that it looks like Joe and Zach Taylor – Zach doesn't look to be very engaged in the argument or whatever issue.
Burrow was so mad.
Mad.
He was so mad. And I'm glad. He should be. They practice this crap all week. And then they go out there and they have 6 false starts, 14 penalties total. They turned it over 4 times. He had 2 interceptions.
And you still scored 37. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy because the Titans had 12 penalties and they had 6 turnovers. So you tell me what kind of game that was. I mean, it was just like, here, you want it? No, you take it. No, you take it. And in between, there's just a yellow flag every other play. Like, 6 turnovers for the Titans, 4 for the Bengals, 14 penalties for 113 yards for the Bengals, 12 for 110. That is 26 penalties for 223 yards in one NFL game. These
And
are
they still
professionals.
and they still missed another hit this week on Joe Burrow's head.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. And there was another play. And so remember they made the rule where like the body weight, when a guy releases the ball and you're hitting him.
Driving a player into the ground. Yes.
I swear that happened in the game and they did not call it. And it's like, that should have been a flag. Now, the pass was completed, but I don't understand. And they want to protect these quarterbacks. And I don't know. To me, that one was fairly blatant, and it didn't get called. But they called enough penalties. Maybe the refs were just like, "Holy God, I can't throw another flag."
They were
pulling this thing out of my pocket.
They were trying to find the flag from the last time they threw it out. Who knows?
Yeah. One guy ran out. He had threw this flag, that, his hat, something else. I mean, by the way, out of the 14 penalties of the Bengals, 6 false starts. On one play, they had 2 penalties. So actually, they had 15 penalties, but one of them was declined while the Titans took the other penalty on the play. So it could have been another one on there. It was like an old Oakland Raiders game back when they just had a penalty on every play. It was ridiculous. But in between yellow flags and false starts, the offense was not all that bad. I mean, Chase Brown, another nice game. Jamar with 9 catches, I believe I had him 9, for. Yep.
9 for 94.
Chase Brown, 25 carries, 97 yards, 3 more receptions. Burrow, 3 touchdown passes. And Jamar's just running away with all this stuff in the receiver categories. I mean, it's 102 on the season now, over 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns.
Sam Hubbard scores a touchdown. Crazy.
Yes, and then gets hurt.
Does get hurt. He might be done for the season.
Oh, my God. That was great. That was a great play by him, too. He made a good play on the ball. And he gets up and looks fine and spikes it. And I don't know if he hurt it on the spike or something after that, but somewhere he wrenched his knee. And, you hope the best for him because, they're getting down now. And, they had to play Devin Cochran at tackle where they're getting down to those guys that, were on the practice squad and they're right. Reaching the depth now and they're at a critical point. I mean, obviously they can't lose. This playoff scenario is hilarious. You got to root for the Chargers on Thursday night. You got to root for the Chargers. The Broncos cannot win that game.
Correct.
It's nuts. They still have what the NFL says is a 5% chance. Bengals have to win out. Broncos or Chargers must lose out. And it's very unlikely the Chargers are going to lose out because I think they play the Patriots and the Raiders after they play the Broncos. The Broncos could lose out. They play legit teams. It's going to kind of depend on what the Chiefs have to do in the final week of the season. And if the Chiefs don't necessarily need to win, then maybe the Broncos could win that. The Dolphins need to lose at least one more. That's very likely. The Colts have to lose one more. And they're going to be favored in their last 3 games. They may be able to win out.
I don't know. The Colts get in their own way, though. They had a guy who pulled a Jordan Battle and Jonathan Taylor dropping a touchdown right before you go into the end zone. Why this is a thing that happened twice in one Sunday is beyond me.
I have no idea.
I saw somebody.
I don't know what Battle was doing. He's running down there. He's got that ball. He's sailing. There's nothing in his way. And oh my God. And now he's obviously, he's more upset than anyone in the city about it. Why? Because he's scoring a touchdown. But how do you lose the ball like that before you cross the goal line? I don't understand.
Saw somebody.
I would be very excited too if I'm a defensive player and I'm going into the end zone. And he was very excited, but you got to score the touchdown. then you can be as excited as you want to be.
I saw somebody suggest that if you were that close for either touchdown, whether it was the Colts or the Bengals, and there's no one in front of you, they should just count it, like almost like a chip in putt, if you will. But
it don't work that way. Like in golf, did you see Rory at the U.S. Open this year? Couple putts like that. Those ones, they don't give you gimmies in pro sports.
Just hold on to the damn ball. It's not that. Just hold on to the damn ball.
Trust me, that Rory thing cost me a lot of money. I mean, those are putts he makes in his sleep. So, yeah, there's no gimmies in pro sports. And, yeah, you got to cross the goal line with possession of the ball. That's just the way it is. That was crazy. So, and now they got the Browns coming up. And the Browns, talk about turnovers. Jameis Winston's back to Mr. Turnover Machine, so he's getting benched.
He's not starting.
Yeah, he's not starting. You know, they're back to who is it? The guy from UCLA, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And Chubb's out. But that opens the door for Jerome Ford. And I'm telling you what, they have not been losing a lot of production with Ford in there when he plays. He's been a legit running back. Huh?
Juwan Briggs up there as well, and he's been making tackles.
I was just thinking of him yesterday. I went by Briggs Avenue over by Hyde Park. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I was thinking of him and the Browns and all that stuff. And good kid, really good kid.
So we'll see what happens. Obviously, an AFC North game, anything can happen. I'm sure the Browns would love to be the team that stamps out the Bengals' hopes of getting into the playoffs.
And I would love to say there's no chance of them pulling that off, but there is. Like you said,
there's always
AFC North game, NFL, crazy things happen. You know, if the Titans don't screw around the way they did in that game, they could have beaten the Bengals in that thing.
The Bengals right now, it opened at 7-point favorites. It's moved to 7.5. They are, I imagine that's due to the Jameis news today. And then they are minus 400 on the money line for Cincinnati to win. Not a game I'll be betting on.
Bengals win this one, then it's going to be, you know, depending on what happens Thursday night. But still, that Broncos game's going to be huge either way. And they move that to Saturday. That's a Saturday afternoon. That's going to be, what is that, December 28th, right? Yeah, 4:30 p.m. game on NFL Network now. They and that game has implications, obviously, for both teams.
Much bigger implications if the Chargers win Thursday night.
Yes.
Because one of the Chargers or Broncos have to lose out.
Yes.
I think the Chargers have the Patriots and somebody else that's
Raiders. They're going to win. They're not losing all three games.
They're not losing out. So your only chance here is Denver.
Right.
Denver has the Chargers, the Bengals, and the Chiefs.
The Chiefs, right.
And the Chiefs could still be playing for that 1 seed, especially if Mahomes is out.
Right.
He practiced today, and he sold his soul.
He did practice.
He practiced today, and he sold his soul to the devil before this season anyway. So he'll be fine.
I will say this: that did not look good, and he was hobbling, and I'm like, he's gonna miss next week.
Nah, he doesn't.
Why would you play him? Like, that's dumb. Hey, you ate a whole 3/4 pound flank steak tonight. You're not barking the rest of the night. You don't get to bark. I made steak tacos tonight, and I left the remainder. Like, I cut the steak, and we were sitting at the table eating our tacos peacefully, and all of a sudden I heard a noise, and I look back, and he's got it in his mouth, and he took 3 chomps off a 3/4 pound flank steak, and it was gone.
I would have done the same thing. I would have done the same thing.
And I told him, bad dog, and he looked at me and he licked his chops like, worth it. Worth it.
Well, we'll see what happens. we'll see what happens with the Bengals. Some last bit of news I wanted to get.
Win there, and then the fun's on.
I think it's all going to fall apart in Week 18, the way that it's always scripted against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we'll see if they're playing for something. That'll depend on their game with Baltimore, because they clinched the division, right? But that game's at Baltimore, so I don't have high hopes for the black and gold in that one.
I don't have high hopes that we make the playoffs. So
no, I don't either. Come on, it's a 5% chance.
The last news I wanted to get to, though, the Reds have been pretty stagnant here of late. They seem to be in on everybody, but there's not been any big moves. You see plenty of big moves around the division, at least more so than you did last season. And last season it was up for grabs for anybody, and Cincinnati just decided to kind of do what they're doing right now. And you moved Jonathan India, you brought in Brady Singer. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, there was after Brady Singer came over. I don't know if you heard or not, but he negotiated with Graham Ashcraft to get number 51 from him. So there was a move there. I wonder what he had to give him. If I'm Ashcraft, with the bad luck he's had with everything, I would have given that damn thing away. I'd say you take that and get it out of here. And that may be what happened. But Brady wanted that number 51, and Ashcraft agreed to whatever their deal was. So,
are you concerned?
That's the only move all week by the Reds.
Are you concerned at all yet? Are you concerned at all yet, though, that Nick Kroll and company have not? They talk a big game.
There's still plenty of time, but yeah, a little bit. I mean, they got to get a corner outfielder that's got some pop, and obviously, the Cubs made a big move, getting Kyle Tucker, and then today unloading some salary to the Yankees with Cody Bellinger. So that move all makes a lot of sense for Chicago, and the Reds need to do something to. They need some. They need some pop out of those corners and in the outfield. And we still don't know about first base. Do you trust Steer, CES? What do you you got to have guys you trust.
Jeimer Candelario, although he seemed to have tweaked something in the winter league that he's playing in. He, I guess, had a foot injury, and that people were concerned. I guess they're having
I
evaluated on that.
Guys on those contracts and playing in those winter leagues like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just too dangerous.
But you see Conforto off the board as he goes to the Dodgers. Teoscar Hernandez is still out there. Santander's still out there. So there's certainly some names anyway. But I'm worried that they're going to overspend on a name, and then we'll still be looking at a situation like they did when they spent money on a guy named Mike Moustakas and got next to no productivity out of him. So when you're looking at guys who are, somewhere in that 29 to 31 range in age, I get a little nervous.
Yeah, no, I do too. And when you give them, a 3 or 4 year deal, you're really going to get nervous, because that's a lot of loot you're on the hook for someone like you mentioned. Moustakas came in here and virtually disappeared.
They still paying him? They still paying him?
I'll have to look that up. I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know. I think are they still on the hook for Junior?
Bronson Arroyo?
$1 billion a year out of him here in the past couple of years. They may still be paying him. But, they should have. I know they don't understand their revenue yet. They probably think they have a good handle on it. But I don't think they have they act like their payroll can be what it was last year. But I still don't know how this television thing's working out for them, and where the revenue stream is coming from when it gets into that. And so, as far as I'm concerned, spend and get somebody productive, because they got to have them if they want to compete. And they've got. I was looking at their pitchers the other night, and looking at some of these advanced statistics, and they've got a chance it would, and I don't know if Louder is going to make the rotation out of spring training, but his, is a short sample. But my God, with him and Green in that lineup, I don't know if Lodolo's ever going to have a healthy season. But
maybe you move him to the bullpen.
Great numbers as a starter last year. His numbers in the advanced stats were great. And Brady Singer coming in, a guy who, light contact, a lot of ground balls. Hopefully that works for him in Great American Ballpark. I mean, he's coming from a ballpark that pitchers love to pitch in out in Kansas City, but I think his stuff works here in Cincinnati. And I think that's a big reason they made this deal. So they've got a good chance to have that part of it down. Now, will they, depending on who they bring in and what it looks like up the middle, hopefully Matt McLean's okay. They say he is, because they got to get that defense up the middle stronger. Well, hell, the defense everywhere stronger, because it let
offense too. Offense too.
I know. Well,
McLean
both.
Well, you've got to hit the ball better. You've got to run the bases better. Those were both
that
issues
was just
last
a disaster.
Yes.
I don't know what was going on there last year, but that was a disaster.
But I know Tito's even addressed base running already in some of his questions on different platforms that he's been on. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they do make some moves with winter meetings. I think they're underway right now.
Yeah, they wrapped up.
Okay. So we'll see where they go from here. But
they allegedly laid the groundwork for some future moves. So we'll see.
I feel like the guy in that meme where it's the stick figure poking the guy on the ground with a stick saying "do something." That's how I feel.
Well, I hope they come through with something. They need to. Obviously, we all know that. I don't know how much they can do because of the issue I talked about with revenue, but they did say they would spend as much as they did last year. So let's get on the stick and get something going here. I don't know what Singer's going to cost him, because I think he's an arbitration guy.
Trade for Ian Happ. I feel like the sample size that he has hit here at Great American Ballpark, he'd have 140 home runs in a season.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's true. His numbers against the Reds are obscene. But it's funny how that happens with certain guys like that. His are ridiculous. His RBI numbers are off the charts against them. I mean, he just kills them. And you know what? Francona may look at that and say, why not?
We'll see. Real quick here in the chat, Randy wants to know, George, can you comment on the Marshall football team quitting en masse?
It's sad. It's sad. And you've got Penn State's backup quarterback leaving to go in the portal while they're going to the playoff. Like, this whole thing is crazy.
Yep.
And it's very disappointing. And I wonder what does a proud Marshall alum like Chad think of this?
He addressed it at some point. I don't see his headphones on. There he is.
It's embarrassing.
It's the AD screwed up. So they created a situation where they took this coach into the final year of his contract without an extension, and he won. And for whatever reason, him and the AD did not get along, and so he decided to bounce. And
all the players bounced too. I would say that AD's not long for this world.
I mean, you got a guy that's really popular with the team, a guy that's winning, and for whatever reason, you guys don't mesh, and you decide to play a who's is bigger contest. And I guess if you're the AD, you feel like you won in the short term, but now you don't have a football program.
Yeah,
I mean, players. You don't have a coach, and
given what they've been through, the whole history of that program and what they bounced back from, and really the way that community down there embraces it.
They love Marshall football.
Right. It's a damn shame. It's a damn shame.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it is.
To do that to the program. Just
and a lot of this stuff to me right now is embarrassing to college football too, with all these guys sitting there. I get it. I get it because I don't know what you do about the schedule of events and, you know, this portal and the schedule on that. Because some of these guys that are leaving playoff teams, I just can't even fathom that. That never would have happened.
The biggest problem with all of that is the rush to get into school before the semester starts.
The
Right.
NCAA is bigger than school. Just move the whole school year back to accommodate the transfer portal window.
Well, I will say this. They should somehow carve out some exception for when you can enroll in January so this stuff doesn't happen.
What I think they need to figure out a way to do, George, is to have like a late enrollment semester that maybe starts in like Feb, because so many of these things are online,
right?
Driven anyway. Yeah, and so you start normally when you start the semester for regular students, but you say we have this online semester that starts February 1st.
I think that's a good idea because a lot of the athletes do the online stuff anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you don't get in January, the way that it's set up right now, then you can't start until like June.
Right. You miss spring ball.
You miss spring ball, you miss winter conditioning, because they'll start conditioning the day that classes start. Those guys will all start with Nico. They'll do, 2 months of winter conditioning and then get straight into spring football. Like, if you miss that as a transfer, you show up in June, and the only chance you have to get up to speed is camp. And guess what? Your camp is not a time for guys starting from the beginning.
No,
you're running with the threes.
That is exactly why these, recruited freshmen started coming in the winter semester, so they could get all of that, and they were up to speed by the time fall camp started, and they weren't wandering around wanting to know, are you the coach or are you the water boy? Who is this? I mean, you can't have it that way. So I think that's a great idea, and they've got to explore that because they're ruining too many things people like about college sports and college football in particular.
It's interesting, George. I was talking to Jimmy today, Maring, at Holy Grail, and I think they started to see some of the effects of the diehardness kind of, like Ohio State normally has a big presence down there for their football games.
Right.
They saw a drastic cut in that this year. UC saw a pretty significant, and I know some of it is, they didn't have the type of season, but like even when they were 5-2, like the watch parties down there were still busy, but it didn't look like it has, the past couple years. I always look at it and say, everybody says that they're getting sick of this, but the TV numbers say the opposite. The TV numbers keep going up, but maybe you're starting to see like people aren't as inclined to go to games. People aren't as inclined to go out to sports bars. And if they're going to watch, they're just going to sit in the comfort of their home.
Right.
And they're going to watch games and have their own fridge and their own drink selection and make some appetizers and kind of do it that way, which ultimately in the grand scope of college football, that's bad for the sport. Because there's nothing better than being out at a sports bar, like when your favorite team is playing well and everybody's high-fiving each other and having a good time. Like, we're starting to see that, and we've got a bunch of bar sponsors. Like, just talking to them, like you're starting to see kind of a decline in that desire to really like go out and spend a bunch of money to watch something that people I don't think care about as much as they have in the past.
Yeah, I hate to see that, and I hate to hear that, but I've been sensing this for the last several years, and with the way everything hit at once with the portal and NIL and the transfer, and you don't have to sit out and just all that stuff hit, and people's heads spinning. They're like, I don't know what this is anymore.
Well, see, that's I think the important thing,
You
George.
don't build up teams where like you don't know who's going to be on your team next year and the year after and the year after. Whereas you used to be able to watch a freshman on the basketball team become a star as a junior or a senior, and it's rare anymore. Now, Cincinnati,
it's happening at one of the schools in town.
Yes, yeah.
The
other one, who's going to be on their team next year? It's going to be the same damn thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost what Kentucky was doing 15 years ago when they were just bringing in a class
without minus the lottery picks.
Yeah, I and I would ask Kentucky fans back then though. I'm like, do you like this where you don't even know who's going to be back next year on your team, that you're going to have a whole different starting five? And a lot of those fans are like, I miss having the same guys back, that you kind of built up a bit of a fan following of, and you look forward to see how they progressed. And a lot really, of that.
I think you hit on the main issue, George, is that it all happened at once, because there have been seismic shifts in college sports over the years.
Yes.
But it was like one at a time, right? Like you kind of got to get used to it, and then something else happened and you got used to it, and then something, but now it's no sitting out on transfers and NIL and the portal, and
it was
the way that coaches leave now is even different, and it's a lot. It's a lot to I guess the biggest problem is people, because of what you're talking about, people don't feel as invested. They don't.
Right. You're not attached.
Right.
Because you would get attached to players. You would get attached,
People are attached to Dan Skillings, to Jizzle James.
Right. Absolutely. And, having to learn a whole new team every year just isn't the same thing. It's just the emotion isn't quite what it would be as, and thank God, actually, both programs are bringing back a lot of players that I want to see again. And I'm very, very thankful for that.
I mean, George, we talked about this in the summer, right as camp was starting. Like, they had the event out at Higher Ground.
Yep.
And, all these people that are big time boosters that are, deeply invested in the program are looking at the roster that they got going,
oh yeah, I did.
And they're asking me questions, and I'm like, look, I'm still learning, and I'm here every day for 3 hours a day. Like, this is my career. This is what I do, and I'm still figuring it out. I don't know how the hell any of you have any idea who these guys are.
We were struggling, and look, I follow it. I keep up with it. I'm not out there every day, but I keep up with who they had to the roster and all who. But still, I was like, holy crap! I guess it's not all lost because Bill Belichick came to college sports, so maybe he said he's looking forward to the start of the season, and his girlfriend said she's looking forward to the start of classes. So that's a good thing. That's terrible. That's terrible.
She's just a couple classes from getting her undergrad degree, George.
Yeah, that's why he went down there, so she could get a degree at Carolina.
What she gets to go to, like, it's like coaches get their kids to go for free. Bill Belichick worked in that. My girlfriend gets free tuition to
the doctorate while she's down there. Oh my God.
On that note, George, you got anything for high school sports in the area?
We're good, although Chad might want to brag about the Juggernauts being 4-0, baby, in hoops. Did you know that?
I did know that. They're looking good. I was at a high school game tonight, George.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I cruised across the lovely metropolis of Independence and watched the Simon Kenton Pioneers take on Jake Thielen, Zach Tobler, and the Covcath Colonels.
The Colonels win?
Colonels did win. It was a good game, though. I think Covcath ended up winning by 10. They pulled away a little bit in the fourth quarter, but it was very strange, Aaron, because Jake is always like the calmest, coolest, most collected dude like on the planet. And Kelsey watched him Kelsey watched him get after one of his guys in the timeout, and she texted me like, "Dad, what happened to Jake?"
Just wait until he ages. Just wait until he ages 15 years in 5.
When you're the head man,
He'll still be the best looking head coach in the country. He's an attractive man.
This is way off topic, but this is UC basketball, but the women. So they're 7-2, beat Xavier. Congrats to them. They had a really good week, and we know they got some good players coming in. I was just looking at the schedule and the wins and losses and stuff. They haven't really played a lot of big schools. Are they going to be any good in the Big 12, or what can we expect, or is it just a wild card?
It's a wild. I mean, they have one of the things you need. Every night they will have one of the top 2 or 3 players on the floor in Jillian Hayes.
Yep.
So the transfer that came in from Texas A&M has played really well at point guard. So they've got some pieces that I think they're going to be more competitive night in and night out. I don't know if they're quite there yet to where they're going to compete like in that upper half of the conference yet. It's a brutal conference, but they're headed in the right direction, it feels like.
Well, God bless Jillian, because she's one of those that stayed in the program and developed and got better she was good when she came in, but still had to find her way and get better. And man, I'll tell you what, she's putting up some numbers.
I mean, if you're a nightly 20-10,
right,
things are going pretty well.
You got that right. That's more than I scored in my career.
You probably had 11 rebounds.
No. I think I got kicked off that team too. Nothing bad. I think it was laziness. I was a lazy kid. I'll just admit it. I was so lazy. I really do regret being that lazy. I really do. I was just a lazy ass in high school.
On that note, I don't know how we I don't know how we follow that up. Thanks as always to Cincy Light Studios for supporting the channel. Again, if you wanted to pick up one of those t-shirts, they have a second print run, and you can pre-order one until Friday, December 20th. So be sure to check that out. And as always, thank you to Remington Tavern. That can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. They can be found on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We'll be back here next Tuesday at 9 o'clock p.m. to discuss all of your Cincinnati sports.
Thank you, Aaron.